PPAP Presentation Task 4. This is my contextual information chart that I have on my PowerPoint. My school is located in Bakersfield, North Carolina, which is a small rural area in which 56% or more of the students receive free and reduced lunch. This school was built in 1954. I teach 15 kindergartners, 6 girls, 9 boys. They are 5 and 6 year olds during the entire curriculum. The curriculum includes ELA, math, science, and social studies. The social studies and science are taught during math and ELA. So when we do ELA, we're incorporating social studies into that. And when we're doing math, we're incorporating science into that. 18% of the population live below the poverty line. The district has an 89.5% graduation rate. And the district serves over 5,320 students. 300 of those come from my school. At my school, 64.1% of the students are economically disadvantaged. 16% in the district have an IEP, and 6.21% are ELL in the district. The student-teacher ratio is 16 to 1. My class is completely white with a 1% of African American. 4% of my students receive IEP, or they are going to be eligible for one throughout the year. 3 of my students are second-year kindergartners. 3 of my students have behavior issues. 2 of those they have care teams that help them learn how to control their behavior and help them with these different activities that can keep them calm instead of having their behavior cause them issues while learning. And one of those students receives counseling for his behavior. Planning the lesson, which I chose comparing numbers to 10. You can see this. This is my slide for this section. I chose this topic because it went along with the standards that my cooperating teacher was teaching at the time. The standards I taught were KCC 6 for math and WK1 for ELA. My guiding questions were how many more, how many less, are they equal, and can I compare to the number 10? The questions that I asked myself was, what lesson would be beneficial, development appropriate, and engaging for all of my students? The activities I had was one worksheet for a whole group, which was dinosaur math. We done that as a whole group. There were 4 different hands-on activities for small groups, and there was one worksheet for the assessment that was differentiated throughout all of my students, low, medium, and high. My focus students, I have 2 of. My FS1 is my low student. He struggles with following directions, focusing, has behavior issues, etc. He's very hyper. My FS2 is my high student. He's very smart. He's on a reading level E as a kindergartner. He always follows directions, and he only has to be taught things once before he understands them and knows what's going on. I knew their needs for both of my focus students from observing them throughout the year and from looking at previous tests and just watching them mostly, because I can understand how they learn by more watching them and looking over their paper. I also got information from their in-class testing at the beginning of the year. During this lesson, students did not use the technology. I did. I used a smart board during whole group. I did not have the students use technology because they are in kindergarten and many of them have never used an iPad. So we have a different time set aside where we're teaching them to use iPads because they're still learning and it's hard to incorporate it when they're still learning how to use it. And the assessment that I used was a summative assessment, which was differentiated throughout all my levels. My low students had a picture assessment. My medium students had a number assessment, and my highest student, which was Focus Student 2, had a word problem assessment. For implementing the lesson, the type of instruction that I used was academic content language throughout the lesson to advance the understanding of the concept being taught in the lesson. The materials I used were the basics: pencils, paper, scissors, and glue, but I also had the materials for each of my activities, which I will be showing you later, but I have laminated game boards, paper clips, counters, clothespins, all that stuff that went along with my hands-on activities for small group. And I'll also show the different assessments that I had as well. Each of my focus students had different assessments. This is the work from my focus student 1. This was his pre-assessment, and this was his post-assessment. As you can see, this one had pictures and this one had numbers. For focus student 2, this was his pre-assessment and this was his post-assessment. This was his word problems, which he done very well on. For interacting with students and classroom management. How did you monitor student learning? I used formative and summative assessments, observing, and one-on-one conferencing. I provided the most feedback through my conferencing, grading, and through whole group instruction. I assessed the effectiveness of feedback for student engagement by observing the kids to see if they were working well in groups, if they were learning and having fun. And the types of verbal and nonverbal communication I used was the verbal was me calling their name out to answer them a question or to call them down because they were talking or just trying to get their attention. The nonverbal communication I used was this to signal that I needed silence, in which all the students will copy by putting a finger on their lip and their hand up in the air. Understanding the focus students. The data I used to predict the probability came from M-class, previous tests, and observations. I determined the best instructional approaches from observing them, and I modified the instruction for both of my focus students by watching how well they both learned during whole group and small group. My focus student 1, who is my lower student, learned best with small groups, and my focus student 2, which is my high group, learned in either one. The instructional modifications for different assessments, read aloud, extra time, one-on-one working, and my baseline data can be seen in the binder here. It's at slides 5 and 6, which was their pre-assessment and post-assessment. I also have baseline data, like I said, from previous assessments and M-class testing. Reflecting on the lesson. You can see that. After reflecting on this lesson, I feel that it was the best lesson that I've taught. All the students learned the material successfully. All the activities worked and they all enjoyed them. I would modify one activity that I had, which was my grab and go, because I felt it was too complicated for them after I tried teaching them to do it and watching them do it, so that's the only activity I would modify. I would make more time for whole group instruction and the rotation of centers, so they would have a little bit more time doing the activities because they were having fun doing those and they didn't really want to switch centers. I would differentiate my activities for my focus students so that they could have more challenging or less challenging work, but I want to have it more challenging for them. As for my 15 to 20 minute video, it started as I was ending whole group instruction and I was starting small groups. I explained to each of the students which of what they would be doing in each center. I went through each center. I also explained to them that our groups would only last for 10 minutes. And so during the video, students are seen working in their groups while I was working with a group and my CT was working with a group. And then at the end, it shows us rotating. And that's what my video was about. And as for my artifacts, they are located in the binder that I have, which I'm going to be connecting pictures to this video with. And I've also included the activities that the students completed during centers. That's it.